Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of The Sweet House. And if you've been here for a while, you've heard me say that over and over and over again. And so I'm just going to keep it conversational. I tell all of the guests when they come in that we're just going to have a little chat about their career trajectories, about their life, about love and happiness and all the things in between. So I'm kicking it off today with my own notes. I always have notes for every guest that comes on the show. Usually we don't use them. We go off script because that's just what happens when you're having a good conversation. So I've got my own notes, but I'm probably going to go off script. I just told the producer and also my girlfriend who owns the studio that I had no idea what I'm talking about today. So I'm going with it. I have some bullet points and we're just going to have a conversation. So let's get into it. My first question that I even have for myself is how the podcast has evolved from season 1 to season 3. And my first solo episode, if you guys remember, I introduced the fact that I'd been laid off from my corporate job to the world, and I had no shame in doing so. And that was February 2023, and now I'm sitting down and it's September 2024. So a year and a half later, and I am almost 30 episodes into the Sweet House, and that means that's 30 episodes of riveting and inspiring conversations with everybody from a Broadway star to somebody who's been on The Voice to a couple who have a TV show on Max to influencer friends that I have to the Titans GM to this season. We've got a CEO. I also have another one of my influencer friends who is also a major philanthropist. And so I've been able to have all of these different conversations. And if you asked me when I started this podcast with an intro that I had been laid off and unsure kind of where I was going next, I don't think I would have had it laid out that I had 30 people, 30 episodes that were going to be one after another. I don't think I saw okay, season 3 is up ahead. So the first lesson that I will tell you is that you just have to start, and you don't have to start with the end in mind. Everything is a domino effect. So just stack your dominoes one at a time and then watch all of the chips fall. And so that's exactly what I've been doing this entire time of filming The Sweet House. It's like once I got to episode 10, I just didn't get enough. I was like, man, all of these conversations are sharing the ins and outs of their careers. Like different people saying, I thought my life was going to go in this direction. I went to school for that. I invested in this and it didn't go that way. Or I was pivoted to a whole different playing field. And so just hearing all of those different stories, by the time I got to episode 10, I said, okay, it's time for another season. And a lot of people do seasons in years. So, you guys know when you're watching a TV show and you don't see the next season of the TV show for like 2 years and you can't even remember what happened on the first season. I did not want that to be the case. And so I decided to keep it rolling last year with season 2. So season 2 kicked off with even more fun stories. And then earlier this year, January 2024, I said, I'm going to film season 3 and also season 4 in 2024. And things didn't go into as planned. And so that's also been another lesson that I've had to just really sit with this year is that everything's going to happen in its due time and that I'm going to stick to the integrity of having quality over quantity. And so earlier this year, I wrote down that I was going to be launching season 3 in like March, and I was going to have this major launch party because I'm 3 seasons in, got 30 episodes, and this is all just amazing, right? Well, then I just didn't feel like everything was flowing right. Like it's expensive to do a podcast. So I just didn't feel like I wanted to make that investment in the time that I was allotting to have this major celebration. So this year I have just given myself the due diligence to let everything be sorted out and let the cards fall where they may, not the chips this go around. And so here we are in the end of September, and I'm just now getting around to launching season 3. So what does this look like when it comes to podcasting? Because when I announced the Sweet House, I was also new to podcasting. I had filmed the Sweet House a couple of times with some rogue producers, and the product was just not what I wanted it to be. So I didn't want to introduce it to the world because I did know I didn't have an end goal or an end vision for the Sweet House, but I did know I wanted it to be presented to the world in a certain way. So I wanted the beginning of it to just come out with the way I wanted it to look, the feel that I wanted it to have, and the inspiration that I wanted to deliver to you guys. And so when I think of that, it takes 10 episodes. So that's 10 sessions of doing exactly what I'm doing right now, which is filming this podcast. But then it's an additional 10 weeks of actually posting the podcast week after week after week. So when you look at it, you're looking at like 20 something weeks of just straight work that you don't even realize is going into it as you're having these fascinating conversations. And so I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was just like, man, I've just filmed almost, I'm at probably 7 or 8 episodes. I still have a couple more episodes to film of season 3, guys. But I've just filmed 7 or 8 episodes, and now we're getting ready to launch this. Because one thing I'm not doing is going into 2025 and not having made some kind of mark towards the goals that I set out for myself. So I think it's important to also note that, like, you can set these goals. They don't have to go in the certain time, at the certain time that you wanted them to go in, but they can go at any point. And so for me, I wanted to produce something in 2024. And so here we are. And that's where we are with the Sweet House podcast. I hope you guys love season 3 of the show. I have thoroughly enjoyed all of these conversations. Some of these conversations, when the producers come and tell me I have 15 minutes left, I can't even believe that we've been talking for an hour because they're that good. So you guys, you're going to want to join the conversations in the comments. And some of them you might cry. We talked about grief, and we've talked about growth and all of these different things within each of the conversations. I wrote down here your favorite moments and standout episodes from this season. That's a hard one for me, but this last episode that I just shot a week ago with my good friend Dom, we hadn't seen each other in 5 years. And so when she sat down in the hot seat of the Sweet House, we just started talking right away about motherhood. And the whole podcast, again, I give people these little sheets with questions on them, and I tell them we're going to use these as our guidelines. And Dom and I completely went left on our entire conversation, and the whole conversation started to center around motherhood. And I think because I do so many things, I don't really give motherhood in its own right for myself enough depth of conversation when I'm talking a lot of times, because I feel like it's not celebrated in the world. It's not celebrated when I'm on a conference call and I'm telling people about my 2-year-old or anything like that. It's more so, well, let's talk about the business. And so sitting down and actually talking to Dom, and somebody who's a philanthropist, an influencer, a businesswoman, and a really good friend of mine, and the whole conversation for at least 50 minutes is about motherhood, was really eye-opening to me, because I'm like, mothers have this immense role to care for a little person and then to raise them into all of these different phases of life, from childhood to, or toddler life, to adolescence, to college, to adulthood, and so many other layers. And so we really are the foundation, and it is one of the most important jobs that I have. And so I would say that that's probably one of my favorite and most standout episodes, because it went a direction that I didn't think it was going to go in. It was very authentic. I think Dom and I just had a moment as friends and as moms who hadn't seen each other in a while to really just catch up. And it just so happened to be filmed for the Sweet House. It was like our own little reality show / very real moment between two mothers. Lessons I've learned from hosting, interviewing, and engaging with my audience. When I started the Sweet House podcast, I remember being so nervous about where I was with my own life. And I've actually had quite a few of these conversations with friends lately. And the lesson that I've learned is, don't wait until everything is perfect to actually do what you want to do. I could have said, I'm unemployed. which I never felt like I was unemployed. Let me just start there. I'm never unemployed. I've always been self-employed, whether I'm working a corporate job or not. And I will tell anybody, none of us are unemployed. We are all self-employed people. We brought ourselves to said corporation, to said job, to lend our skill sets and to really build something at these places. It's our intellectual property that companies are using to grow their companies. And so when I think about it, I always tell people, you're not unemployed, you're self-employed. And so the conversation is really around how we identify with ourselves. Like I was at lunch with a friend yesterday and she said she didn't want to travel somewhere to see a friend because she didn't have a job. And I just remember when I first came out with that episode telling people that I had just lost my job, I was like, I just lost my job. I'm moving forward. Like we're going forward. We're going to continue to produce the things that like I love. And I want to have conversations with other people who've also been in the same position and they came out on the other side. And I want to share those stories so that we can shift the perspective that you're not enough if you're not employed by normal terms or normal standards. And so the lesson that I learned from all that is you don't have to have everything lined up. Everything doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to be within industry standards for any said thing to just produce something because you love it. And I'm glad that I didn't say to myself, well, what would the world want to hear from you? You don't have a job. Because I knew that I had a job. And even if I didn't have a job, I could create the job because at the end of the day, I am self-employed and so are you all. As far as interviewing everybody, I actually went to meet a new friend at Soho House here in Nashville just 2 days ago, and we had the best conversation for about 3 hours. But she and I had been virtual friends or social media friends, and then we decided to take that conversation to the public and actually see each other and embrace each other and hug and talk about our careers and all of the things and get to know each other. So that's been the cool part about interviewing and engaging with my audience because she was somebody who followed me on Instagram and then we became friends in real life. So some personal and professional challenges that I have faced when producing season 3. I want to talk about how I have continued to do multiple things because I think when I got laid off from my corporate job and I started the Sweet House podcast, I did envision for myself that I was going to just be doing the Sweet House podcast and my influencer business, and that was going to be my linear experience. But back to interviewing people who have been on the Sweet House and talked about their career trajectories, no one has had this linear experience. That's why I started the show. So I don't even know why I told myself that that's going to be my experience because it absolutely has not for the past year and a half. So I have continued to have a foot in corporate America as a consultant/contractor for a couple of companies that you may know, Peloton and also another company called Procore. And that's where I lend my expertise on app marketing. And then I've also continued to grow my influencer business. And I've also continued to grow this podcast platform. So I think it's okay to continue to put all of your eggs in many baskets and to foster all of them and to see where you come out on the other side of it. I am just so excited to see where 2025 goes because 2024 has gone nothing according to what I wrote down, and I'm okay with that. So that's another lesson. At the beginning of this episode, I thought to myself, maybe I'll do 35 reasons or 35 lessons that I have learned in my 35th year of life because my birthday's next week. But then I said to myself, that's just not even realistic because I've learned so much, way more reasons or lessons than I can even write down on paper. And I'm going to continue to share those with you guys, whether it's on season 3 or season 10, which I'm hopeful that we can continue on with season 10. Professional challenges for sure are happening. I was just telling the producers a minute ago about a conference call that I was on, and I was challenged in a way that I wanted to just have this rebuttal that probably wouldn't have been what needed to happen on that conference call. I would have been completely out of line, maybe not politically correct because I'm human and I was having a response to something that was being said to me on the conference call. So there are professional challenges. I mean, even today, I walked into the studio and I said, I have no idea what I'm talking about, but I'm just going to talk and I'm just going to share these lived experiences, human experiences with you guys in the best way that I know how to do. And so here I am sitting down and facing those challenges head on. I called my husband on the way over here and he said, why don't you just pray about it? God will deliver what words you need to say to your audience and you'll just go from there. And I feel like God always delivers. So I will also say that one of my lessons has been to really lean into my faith and be still this year and also surrender at the same time. When things weren't lining up to start shooting this podcast, when I wanted to shoot this podcast, and I'm just giving that example, but there have been several other examples of things in my life that I had lined up as New Year's resolutions or things that I wanted to do in February, March, April, May, June, and July that just did not follow those connected dots. And so I'm saying that because I want all of you all to really feel that, because we are setting ourselves up for failure when we exist only on these timelines that are not necessarily feasible to life happening all around you. And life is happening. It is not a stagnant thing. It's happening, and it's happening to you and for you. But sometimes you do have to sit still. Sometimes you do have to surrender. Sometimes you do have to just be willing to take it all in and then continue doing, even if it's baby steps or even if it's on somebody else's time. I want to say thank you to all of you all for continuously showing up for the Sweet House brand, not just the podcast. This has been a long time coming. When I look back at my social media footprint and I see that I started this brand in like 2011 and that it is still growing and branching off into different things in 2024, I can't help but be thankful, but also just be proud of myself, because sometimes you have to say thank you, self, for continuing to pour into something that was not necessarily underlined or bolded for you to do. The job title did not exist. I created my own job. I created my own landscape for me to walk through, whether it was creating content or coming up with podcast episode ideas or whatever it is. I've created all of this, and I'm just really grateful to share the creation with all of you all. So thank you so much for continuing to chime in. Many of you have sent DMs on things that you want to talk about or people that you want to hear from, and all of that gives me so much inspiration. And I also want to thank you guys, because I think we're living in a day and age of so much fraud on the internet. And one of the things I always say is I am not showing up for a fake audience. So when we talk about buying likes, buying followers, buying comments, and you can buy all of these vanity metrics, I have no desire to participate, because at the end of the day, if we had to take the show on the road and we had to do it live, those people are not going to be sitting in the audience. Bots cannot sit in the audience. And there's an energy exchange that happens when you sit down and create content for people who are real versus people who aren't real. So yes, we are facing technological disadvantages like the algorithm and all of these things that can deter a content creator, an artist, a musician, or whoever is putting out content from wanting to put out content. But at least at the end of the day, even if your content is shown to less people because of the algorithm or because of these technological disadvantages, at least you are showing up for the least bit of authenticity that may be left on these social media platforms. And you can thank yourself as a content creator for continuing to just exist beyond what these circumstances, because it's so easy to walk away from it. So I we'll definitely have to acknowledge anybody who's remaining real amongst all of this. It's so easy to create clickbait content or content that doesn't actually tell an authentic story or keep people coming back for more. It's so easy to create the 7-second reel that gets people's attention for that, and then they share it with all of their friends. But are they coming back to get more substance from you? Are they coming back to be a part of your journey? My followers, you guys have been with me for so many different occasions, from job layoffs to me getting pregnant, to me being a mom, to me getting married, to me sending Rain to daycare for the first time, to me taking her to Disney for the first time. You guys have just been such an integral part of my growth and also my success. So I have to say thank you for being here for all of that. Let's see how my life has changed since my early 20s leading up to this moment. You guys, I was just having this conversation yesterday because when I think about where I was when I was 25, I had just graduated with my MBA and I was still broke. And I was low-key broke in on the inside about my career because I went to college at 17 and I was told if you go to college to get this degree, you're going to be able to do X, Y, and Z. Everything is going to be perfect. You're going to have this perfect salary. You're going to have the corner office. You are going to be living in the glass box that looks out at the city, all at the age of 25. So I had this vision for myself of what 25 was supposed to be looking like. And I look back on it and I laughed because it was so unrealistic. And I put all of that pressure on myself to be able to live like that. And then I look at this generation and this generation's influence easily, I guess, on... or not their influence, but they're being easily influenced to kind of also have that same ideology. And so I'm bringing this up because my 20-somethings, I had that vision for myself, and it didn't necessarily look like that. And now here I am, 10 years later at 35, and I do have more, but I also have given myself 10 years to work towards more. So I do have 2 houses and I am, able to do certain things that I only imagined that I could do at 25. But I think the reality is the idea of becoming a child prodigy or some young 20-something or achieving something by a certain age is also very unrealistic. And so if I had to say what has changed since my early 20-somethings to now, it's exactly that. One thing I will say that is really positive is that I've always had a lot of confidence in myself. One of the reasons why I decided to go back and get my MBA in my early 20-somethings was because I had been working in corporate America since 21, 22. And then I felt like I didn't have the business expertise that I needed to bring to the table. So at 24, I was like, okay, I'm going to go back and get my MBA. And I actually decided to do an online program and then an in-person program because I wanted to get it over with as soon as possible. Because I was like, I have to get this over with because I have to live this lifestyle by the time I'm 25 because I can't focus on not having all that I have imagined for myself. And when I look back on it, like I said, I maybe shouldn't have had such imaginary aspirations, but I also think it's not necessarily a bad thing to have those aspirations because it did set new heights for myself, and I definitely still maintain that confidence, and that's why I've been able to do cool things like branch out and invest and record my own podcast because I've had that confidence that everything's going to work out. If I build it, they will come. So I just asked how we were doing on time because I am only, maybe 1/4 of the way through my questions here. And I told you guys we were going to go off script. So I have been going off script. But it's just really interesting to kind of put what's happening in your life into these little episodes, and then also to sit here and talk to the camera. But again, I can sit here and faithfully and authentically talk to the camera because I know that the people who are actually going to see this are real people, even if the algorithm prevents the masses from seeing it. And I'm just really extremely proud of that. So, you guys, we've been a few minutes into this episode, and I just feel overjoyed that I can even say that. So, let's keep going. Major life events that have happened. Rain is turning 3 in November. Mr. Sweet and I celebrated 7 years married and 14 years together this past year. We are just continuing to move steadily through life and still celebrating each other. And tonight we're going to take Rain to Disney on Ice. We got to be kids again. We took her to Disney World a couple weeks ago, and that was really fun. Everyone told us that we were going to be exhausted. I kept telling people, oh, we're taking Rain to Disney, and I was so excited about it. And everybody else was like, you're going to be exhausted. But then we went, and we were like, no, we're not exhausted. Like, this is actually alleviating just to be a kid again, to actually enjoy the safari, to enjoy the music of The Lion King, to get our faces painted. Rain and I got our faces painted, and it was the best thing ever. So when I look at these things, that's another lesson that I'll share with you guys, is to like be a kid with your kid. On one of the episodes of The Sweet House, Dominique, one of my friends, she says that she gets down eye level with her kids, and she invests in the bond that she's building with them and the relationships that she's building with them. And I feel extremely blessed to be able to take Rain to Disney World at 2.5 years old. But I think it just reminded me to also enjoy the inner child. I think when we talk about who we were as children, a lot of times we convey it as childhood trauma, and we only want to talk about all the bad stuff that happened to us and how it's shaped us into who we are today and the boundaries associated with all of that and what we are and aren't going to put up with. But I also think so much of our childhood is so joyous. Like, we get to laugh, and we really get to like just not worry about anything. As kids, we're not paying any bills. We're not worried about all this stuff. We don't even know that half of these dichotomies even exist in the real world until we get older. So it's really cool to just let your shoulders relax and be a kid again. When I pick my daughter up and I know we're going on a family date to Disney on Ice, or even if we're just going to get ice cream and go to the park, there's something alleviating and satisfying about me just letting go of the day on the playground or whatever we're doing together. So that's also something that I am happy to share with you guys is happening in my personal life. So I want to talk about my career trajectory. At the beginning of this year, decided that I wanted to reach back and start educating college students. And so I created a workshop or a lecture series entitled Influencer Marketing in the Grand Scheme of Marketing. And so I put all of my experience as an influencer and my experience working in the multiple facets of marketing, from PR to communications to web to digital to social media to app marketing and just the whole 9 yards. I decided to put it together in this beautiful PowerPoint and start delivering those lectures. So I spoke to the students at Belmont. I also spoke to the students at Vanderbilt, which are two wonderful universities. And it was really interesting because what I learned is that they are getting textbook versions of marketing, but they aren't necessarily getting the experiential side of marketing that they need to go into these jobs and be competitive and also successful. So I was happy to create this sort of curriculum for them and then be able to share my experiences that I've had over the past decade. And so I've often wondered with my career, why have I been doing social media at First Tennessee? Why was I doing social media at Humana? And then I went to go work in higher education and I did brand marketing and web and social media. And then I ended up at iHeart where I was doing app marketing, and Procore and Peloton where I'm doing app marketing. But then this whole time I've been able to build and sustain my brand as an influencer. And sometimes I've said to God, like, why do you have me in all of these different things? Then I stepped into podcasting. Why am I in all of these different sectors of media and marketing? So this year I actually put all of that to use when I created my own workshop series. And so I'm happy that I got to share that with those students and prep them for all the things that they're going to go into, because I didn't have that same experience when I was a social media manager fresh out of college in 2011. I remember telling my friends and other people that I was a social media manager, and they were like, "What's that? Get a real job." And it's funny to me because now a social media manager is like one of the hottest jobs out there. So again, another lesson that I'll share with you guys is sometimes the job title has not been created. Sometimes the job description has not been created. Actually, it's funny, when I read job descriptions, I laugh. I saw one the other day that said that you needed 15 years of social media experience. And I said to myself, okay, 15 years of social media experience was around the time of MySpace and Black Planet, and no one was actually doing anything on those social media sites. And so it's really interesting that this job description was taking it all the way back to then, when companies are still trying to figure out their strategy around social media and app marketing and all of these different means of marketing. So I will continue to educate college students. I'm actually lecturing at Vanderbilt again this fall twice. And so who knows where that's going to go in 2025. I definitely foresee even more speaking engagements, even broader stages where I can talk about data and on the front end of apps and on the back end of apps, and consumers having access to that data to then be able to make decisions on how their information is used, whether it is via photos and videos or whether it's actual data, app data, meaning like what time they signed into their app and what they were doing on the app and all of that stuff. I have been privy to see the back end and the front end of these things. And I've been privy to see what it's like to be an entrepreneur and also work in corporate America. So when I put this whole pot together and deliver my recipe to the world, it is sweet and it is sound and it's good, y'all. So I'm going to continue to do that as well. I also got the opportunity to speak at Junior League's first women's conference this year. It was such an amazing experience. They asked me to speak on the power of pivoting. And so again, I came up with this awesome program of how I can deliver my story, but get the audience engaged and talking about the pivots in their own lives. We are all at a crossroads every day. And one thing that I've learned about myself is I'm not the most decisive as a mother. Sometimes I will ruminate on things, let them sit in my mind for days or weeks or whatever. I used to be more decisive. I used to be able to say, I'm going to do this right now. I'm going to happy hour tonight as soon as I get off work. Now I have to sort through a lot of details to actually make those decisions. And so when I think about pivoting, I wanted them to be able to take from my story that I pivoted because things happened and then I had to make a choice to go right or to go left. And I weighed my options. Did this side have more bullet points that were positive, or that side have more bullet points that were positive? And then I went one way or the other. But the coolest part about pivoting is no matter what, your pivot is going to be a powerful moment in your life because it's going to catapult you to wherever you're actually supposed to be. Like, you are not in control of the big picture of this. Like, exactly where you are is exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And I know a lot of y'all on the other side of this camera are probably saying, well, I don't like where I am right now. So like, why am I in this situation? But you're in this situation so that you can somehow, in some way, and I can't tell you exactly which way and what how, but somehow in some way on the other side of this, it's going to make sense. It always equates to something bigger. And so it was really beautiful to pour into those women and talk about pivoting, but it also forced me to be authentically and truthfully, like, just intuitive of my own journey. Like, why did I make those decisions? And so I hope that you guys know that you can also question yourself. It's okay to question yourself. It's okay to take your time to make decisions, and it is okay to pivot in the different directions. Speaking of motherhood, I am constantly juggling motherhood. And I was actually chatting with a friend before I started filming this podcast. And she's also a mom. Both of us are celebrating our birthdays in the next week. And so she goes, "What are your birthday plans?" I was like, "I don't know, because I'm just trying to get through today and get my daughter to Disney on Ice tonight." So I hadn't even thought about my birthday plans. And she said, "Yeah, my birthday's tomorrow. And I don't have any birthday plans either. And I haven't had time to even sort out those birthday plans." And then she and I were just chatting. Before we became moms, we had time to sort out our birthday plans. We had the birthday dress picked out. We had the restaurant we were going to a month in advance. We were celebrating all month, whether it was going on a coffee date, going to work out. Like, we had it all figured out. And now it's like, as a mother, you have to actually make time to do those things. I can't just say, okay, I'm going to meet somebody for happy hour. I have to figure out my childcare. I have to make sure my daughter has dinner. I have to make sure her clothes are laid out for whoever's going to keep her for bedtime. I have to make sure that her fan and her sound machine are on in her room so that she can sleep peacefully, and then I can go home and sleep peacefully too. So there's so many different pieces to sort through. I was watching this reel on Instagram the other day, and the mom was sitting in her car doing like this, and then she was like running off all the thoughts that are in her head that never even come out of her mouth. And I thought it was just really like spot on for what motherhood looks like, because it's literally calculations all day long. You're literally like, okay, if I get up at 6, I got 20 minutes to wash my face and brush my teeth, then I can go downstairs and get coffee and X, Y, and Z. But what I have learned with all of the juggle is to get very minute about it, and very intentional. So when I wake up, if I have 10 minutes to brush my teeth and wash my face, or 20 minutes, then that is also the time that I'm going to spend giving myself some gratitude and just pouring into the day. I'm going to do my devotional. I will literally turn on my Bible app while I'm brushing my teeth, just so I can have that moment with God before I start the day. And then when I go downstairs, I know I'm going to start multitasking. I'm going to go ahead and start looking at my emails while I'm fixing coffee, while I'm fixing breakfast. So I'm getting very intentional about it, though. Like, I will slow down some mornings where I'm feeling overstimulated, and I will just make the coffee, and I will just smell the coffee. And then I will actually pay attention to the fact that I'm pouring Splenda in the coffee. And so to all my mamas out there, just give yourself some grace and just like really slow down sometimes, speed up sometimes. There are times for both, and there is room for both. And so I get a lot of questions on how I do it all as a mom. And so that is how I do it all as a mom. Some days I know I'm going to have to go from one place to the next place to the next place. Earlier this week, Rain had a dentist appointment in the morning. Then I got her to school. And once I got her to school, I had 30 minutes to walk before I had an appointment. So I took that time to walk and just like take care of my own mental health and my own well-being. Then I went to work, and then I had meetings back to back to back. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to take a minute and actually eat and not pay attention. I'm not eating on a call. I'm not eating while I'm doing something else. I'm not eating and multitasking. I'm just going to sit here and actually eat my meal and recognize what I'm eating and just be present. And so as moms, there are seasons when you have to like speed through things and focus on multiple things at once. And your kids appreciate it. I think Rain appreciates the fact that like I'm able to sit there and edit photos at the same time that like I'm paying attention to her and enjoying her as a little person too. So I've learned not to beat myself up about all that I want to do while also tackling motherhood too. I definitely think it's important to prioritize your mental and your physical health. If I don't work out, I don't feel good. So I work out almost every day. I've been doing this 10,000 step challenge. I actually worked with Procter & Gamble in June for a music festival, and we were working so much. Everyone thinks influencers just take pictures for a living, but we do not. We actually work. Sometimes the work includes taking 17,000 steps a day. And so when I was in Cincinnati at the Cincinnati Music Festival, and we were walking back and forth from the hotel to the venue to meet up with P&G reps, and just all of the content creation and all the back and forth of it all, I was clocking so many steps. And so I decided when I got home from that experience that I was going to keep it up and continue to get my 10,000 steps in a day. And here's the cool part about this. So I was getting in this moment to myself every day. So I'd go between meetings, or I would park at the back of the parking lot to drop Rain off at school and get in the steps. Instead of taking the elevator, I would take the steps. And so there's so many opportunities for you to just be with yourself when you're not like rushing, or when you take your time. Like sometimes I used to pull in the Kroger parking lot, park in the front, run in and run right out. Now I'm like parking at the back of the parking lot and then taking my time to get to the front. And so when I think about it, it's like I'm giving myself time to process things mentally, but also taking care of my physical health. But then my husband picked up on it and decided he was also going to join me on the 10,000 steps. And so did some of my friends. And so it's a domino effect, as I mentioned before, where things just start to fall in line. And so it's really cool because we're keeping each other accountable. So every day, every night, we're like, where are you with your steps? And sometimes we'll just walk around the house until we get those steps. But no matter what, the two of us are pouring into our physical and mental health, because the only way for you to be successful in this life, to me, is to take care of your health. That is what success looks like to me. At 25, it looked like having these assets and these things. At 35, it looks like me taking care of my well-being so that I can be present for everyone in my life who loves me. And that's a whole lot of people. And I even read this quote that said, you haven't even met everybody in your life who's gonna love you, and that is the absolute truth. So why not prepare yourself for all these people that you're gonna meet? Let's see. I have chatted about a lot of different things. So we're gonna skip to the end. What's next for the Sweet House? This is a very bold proclamation, but I hope that the Sweet House turns into a household show where people are just asking to come to be on the show to share their stories, because their stories are inspiring and inclusive of pivots and joys. I hope that, we continue to have conversations that make people cry and make people laugh, and that we continue to also be entertaining. I hope that the Sweet House continues to do numbers on social media, and also as far as the episodes go. I think it's so easy to be deterred when you don't see the numbers, but I'm 30 episodes in at the end of season 3, and I am just going to continue to lean into that. I hope the Sweet House has 30 seasons. I hope it maybe even gets picked up by even bigger entities. And so that's where I see the Sweet House going. If you or somebody you know wants to come on the Sweet House, here is my plug. You will not regret spending an hour with me to actually sit down and have the coolest conversation of your life. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about. I always ask the guests what they want to talk about, but then I also do a lot of research on the guests, and a lot of them are actually shocked about what's out there on the internet about them. But I do all the research. I search people's social media. I canvass the internet. I want to see it all. I want to talk about it all on the show. And we condense it down to an hour and a half conversation and go from there. I also feel like the Sweet House is going to be a premier place for people to get real insight, because it's not clickbait. It's very much so like very minimal editing. It's like the conversations usually are what the conversations are. We don't really take out very many pieces here. So I hope that people continue to come. So you guys go tell your friends, go tell your family, and all of that. When I look back on my personal growth, on my growth this year, 2024, both personally and professionally, I am extremely proud. So that's my final piece, is to do something you're proud of. If you've taken nothing else from this episode, I hope that you've taken that you've got a lot to offer and you have a lot to be proud of. And if you're still kicking, like at whatever age you are, whether it's 25 or 35, you got a lot of living to do and a lot of sweet life to make. So thank you guys so much for tuning into this solo episode of The Sweet House. Also, if you want to see more solo episodes of The Sweet House, feel free to drop a comment or send me a DM, and you might just see more episodes of The Sweet House. I just feel like I share so much of my life on my social media anyways. I don't really do solo episodes, but I am more than happy to be inclusive of more shows like this in the future. Thank you guys for watching.